Welcome everybody to episode 21 and season 2 of Everyone Hates the Commissioner. We have Dan and Bo tonight. How are you guys doing?
We're good, man. We're good. I'm a little bummed though. I'm a little bummed that we're not going to get to see Aaron Rodgers play football this year. So, in his honor, and due to his tragic end of the season, I did break out the Jets jersey. So, for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an awful that was a gut punch for me. I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan myself, so that was tough. Tough to see him do that on the fourth snap on offense
Yeah.
last night, that or a couple nights ago. That was rough. So, Dan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. 1-0 in fantasy. That's really the big thing that we care about, right? Got to defend that championship trophy. But more sad news for my team, Aaron Rodgers, fittingly on the IR with the rest of my starting lineup.
Hmm. Yes, we'll get into that shortly when we discuss some off-season moves between you two and some other trades. But let's I want to see what you guys up to this weekend. Got anything fun planned?
Yeah, I've got a big weekend coming up actually. I'm going to a buddy's place to watch the Badger game on Saturday. They've got a cupcake. I don't even remember who it is, some garbage team.
Georgia Southern.
Is that what it is? They're favored by like 20. So it should be a piss pounding. And then hitting up the Brewer game on Sunday. So it'll be a big weekend of sports watching. We'll have the Brewer game going in the background and watching the Packer game on my phone. So it'll be a big sports weekend.
Very nice. Badgers look very, very rough.
Well, yeah,
Brewers,
naturally.
on the other hand, they're catching some fire right now, which
Yeah.
is amazing. We're 18 games over 500 now. And then so as long as we have a 3-game lead going into the last series of the season, we'll be okay. Because then we got the Cubs, it'll be, you never know what happens with the Cubs. But
Yep.
yeah, that sounds like a good weekend. Dan, how about you?
Easy weekend this weekend. I have a work outing in Utah the week after. So I'm gonna just rest up this weekend for the following week ahead.
Nice, nice. Well, Bo, I saw you. I think I saw some champagne over there in your hand. Is that what your drink of choice is this evening? That's
The
right.
champagne of beers, my friends.
There
I've been on a bourbon kick, so I snuck back in a couple of beers.
you go. Some spotted cow. Very nice. I
Oh
do.
boy,
I
Dan.
forgot to show us some. I'm sorry. I want to apologize to our sponsors. Last week I did not name drop, but we have a bottle of Basil Hayden's here. Got some subtle smoke tonight. So I'm gonna sip on that during this beautiful podcast. So all right. Well, and then let's see here. I want one more quick one before we start diving into some football. Did you guys have a favorite meal of the week?
Yeah, I just had Kaylin made some macaroni and cheese, and we had some leftover pulled pork. Mixed those two together. That was dinner for me this evening. It was a pretty yummy one, a concoction of multiple meals, but it came together as a good one.
Very good. Dan?
I did the boring meal prep this week, a lot of chicken and rice, but on Monday night, I may have stopped by Mission Barbecue and got myself a little brisket sandwich
Oh, there you
before
go.
Monday Night Football. So, yes.
Very nice. I made some ribs on Monday night, and then I fried them up and got to cut them up, fried them, got to throw them in the fryer, get a little crisp on it, toss them in some buffalo sauce. So it's kind of like a buffalo pork wing. That was very, very good.
Yeah.
It's a favorite around here now. So all right, well, cool. All right, Bo. So tell us kind of you have a new fantasy team name this year, and then kind of give us a little rundown on your team and how you did last weekend.
So it took the L last weekend. It was a tough one for the Better Call Hall squad. Going into the off season, I knew I needed to get a little younger, and the other goal that I wanted to accomplish was to find a QB that's a little bit more of a dual threat. I'm a huge Justin Herbert fan. I think he's a fantastic QB, and we're going to talk a little bit more about him because I've got a bone to pick with his head coach. But I knew I had to get a guy that gives a little bit more ground threat at the quarterback position because I think in fantasy, if you can get a QB that produces both on the ground and in the air, it's kind of like having two guys for one spot. And with Anthony Richardson coming out of the draft this year, waiting to see where he went, and the fact that he went to the Colts and that Shane Steichen is his new head coach, I thought that would be the perfect opportunity to jump on a guy that was historic in the NFL draft combine from the QB perspective, QB position. So I wanted to get younger, and I wanted to find a dual threat QB that I can kind of plug and play. And it looks like he's going to turn out. So I think we're doing well. The Better Call Hall squad has some young talent, and we're coming up. We took the L because we got bagels from T. Higgins and Dallas Goedert, but even if I put my best two guys off on the bench into those spots, I still wouldn't have won. But things are looking up. I think we're in good position going forward.
And I actually, Nick, you don't know this, but I actually reached out to Bo this week to, just see if maybe one of those guys was available, Bo and I did not trade at all at first. And we made a couple deals in the offseason. So, I had to reach out, see if we could do anything. I think Bo's smart to kind of hang on to those two guys to see what happens. But yeah, I think in our one QB league, Herbert's a very, very safe, high ceiling guy every week. I think AR-15 is going to turn out. So I think he's a good guy to stash as backup.
Yeah. And being that we're talking about doing the super flex, I know it's still kind of up in the air, but if that does become a thing, I think we're in a good position with those two solid QBs.
Yep. I feel like I kind of took a similar approach with taking Bryce Young. I took the number 1 overall pick in case, and I was kind of set at quarterback as well with Joe Burrow, but kind of having Bryce Young on the bench in case we do transition over to a superflex in a couple of years. And grant we have to let the people decide on that one. But if that happens, I think with you, like same thing like you were saying with Justin Herbert and AR, I think you'd be in a really good shape there. So. But hey, I don't know. I've never done it. I want to do it in the worst way, but I think I've said this before, but the super flex, from everything I'm hearing and reading, it people just love it, and it's the way to go. So maybe we'll transition to that in the next few years. So, but Dan, a little see here how you did this last weekend.
Yeah, I am in 6 leagues. That's my limit. That's already too many. I went 4-2. The 2 that I lost were the 2 leagues that I'm the commissioner in, so that sucks. But the one that matters the most is our league, because that's the OG league. I am the butt of all the TikTok and Instagram jokes from last week before the season, because I have Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, and Travis Kelce all on my roster. I also have Kyler Murray on the IR spot. My starting quarterback this week was Aaron Rodgers, who obviously is now on IR. But with all of those top guys still out, I still won. I put up the second most points in the league. My team is extremely stacked. They're a little old, but they looked good. Nick Chubb, if they can get him in the end zone this year, he is going to be an absolute monster. McCaffrey had another big game. Diggs, Olave, my guy stepped up. So good to start the year 1-0.
Yeah, it was a rough weekend, and I think for a lot of fantasy players, it wasn't as high scoring in terms of offense last weekend, and I think a lot of that played into bad weather. A lot of games over on the east side of the country, there was some bad weather. There was Cleveland, New England. There was another one that on Sunday night with the Giants and Cowboys, a lot of rain, and that kind of dampened down on the passing game a little bit. But yeah, the Bengals Browns game, that was just a massive disappointment. You come out, see Joe Burrow get the big $275 million, go out in the season opener and throw for 82 yards. That's tough. That's tough to watch. And even if he had 15 points and you could tack a couple more on for Jamar Chase, then I would have squeaked out a win here. But yeah, that Bengals game, I think Bo, you and I are on the same page. That was really, really tough to watch this last weekend.
Well, and it's something that we're kind of seeing the last couple of years. I think there's been a little bit of a shift. So many coaches don't want to play their starters in the preseason because it means nothing. But then you get to the week 1, and we saw this, I think, in a couple of different games. The one that comes to mind is the Tennessee game. Ryan Tannehill was just dreadful, and I think that you can attribute that to not getting any reps in the preseason. These guys come out and they're so rusty, and it takes time to get back into game rhythm. And it was a sloppy weekend of football in the NFL, that's for sure.
Yeah, we saw
practice reps. As many as you get, practice reps are just not the same thing.
Yeah.
We see on TV, they do a lot of these joint these joint camps now. But even that, even when they have the refs coming in, because the refs get practice as much as the players, those are still not the same as in-game reps, in the moment situations, especially for the coaches too, having to make those decisions. Tennessee, to your point, Bo, they were down 16-12 with a couple minutes left, got in scoring range, decided to take the field goal and kick off with a couple timeouts left because that's what analytics tells you to do. Obviously, the Saints were able to run the clock out. So just things like that, I agree 100%. These guys, they've got to be ready for the contact, for the in-game speed, for the decision-making and the situational.
Yeah, 100%. Was there anybody that really kind of I guess we can talk about surprises later, but I was gonna say, these that down goes the champs right away on Thursday night. That was kind of a shocker. The Lions pulling that one off. I mean, that defense. I mean, I don't know if I've seen Patrick Mahomes that frustrated facing a defense before, and it could be because, like you said, just kind of the lack of reps and being early in the year, but. Yeah, he looked in the kind of the third quarter there watching that game. He was getting pretty frustrated, and I enjoyed that very much personally. I know I mean, that was me rooting for a divisional rival that Thursday night, but I loved watching the Chiefs go down. And holy shit, is Jahmyr Gibbs as good as he was advertised? Holy cow, that guy is electric.
He's a spark, man. He's a spark. He gets the football in his hands, and you better watch out, man. He's fun to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's not only is he just freaky fast. The second he makes contact, it's just like the balance is unbelievable. He's got the speed and the power there. That's going to be a dangerous combo, and we're going to be dealing with that. I think for a long. We're going to be, as Packers fans, we're going to be kind of dreading that for the next 4, 5, 6 years at least. So, but anybody else kind of like, whoa, blow your mind this in terms of fantasy or just in games in general this weekend?
So I'll go first, Dan, if you don't mind. And I want to get into, I brought up the Chargers, and I think that game was just fantastic to watch. I watched a little bit back of it, some highlights last night because it was on the NFL Network. They were showing the game again, and that game was amazing. It was a track meet up and down the field. I thought it was a little surprising. I thought the Chargers defense would have been a little bit better. And that brings me to my bone to pick with their coach, Brandon Staley. I'm over it. I'm done. When you are playing against the Miami Dolphins and their speed on offense, and you come out and you play the most man coverage of any defense in the NFL this year, you should get fired on the spot. I just don't understand. Like, you've got big, strong corners that you try and match up with these wide receivers, and you get fried over and over and over again. And Tyreek Hill was a monster. I'm done with Brandon Staley. I think he's run his course, and I think he's over his head trying to coach that team. He's a defensive coach, and his defense is trash, and he's got good players on that defense. I just don't understand. And I think the Chargers need to be done with him and just give Kellen Moore the head coaching job.
Interesting. Yeah, and it didn't help that JC Jackson was coming off of that broken foot, that foot injury. It didn't help anything, but I agree 100%. I mean, I don't know if there's any good defense to stop Tyreek Hill, but you got man-to-man coverage with a guy with coming off of a foot injury is not on the top of that list.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah. Hey, I want to do some talking about fantasy here. I want to talk about these trades that you guys made over the off season. Why don't we kind of dive into that a little bit?
Go ahead, Dan. I'll give you the floor to start.
Yeah, you know me. I am the GM that works 365 days a year. That's my job, right? As a make-believe general manager, I need to try to make my team better all the time. So I made a doozy of a trade today, Nick. I don't know if you saw that. Pending. I gotta keep my team in win now mode. So Bo and I made a pretty big trade. I don't remember all the pieces, but the big pieces were I sent Saquon Barkley over to Bo, and I received Cooper Kupp. I believe I received James Conner and possibly a first.
Yep.
And I believe you got Saquon, a second, and maybe another piece.
I think 3 seconds.
I think it was 2 seconds and a third, along with
Yep.
Barkley. Yep.
Yeah. I really liked James Conner. He's my fourth option. I don't need to start him, but he's a great plug and play guy. I mean, he catches the ball for PPR. He's going to be on a bad team. But because he's a receiving back and because he really has no competition in the backfield, I felt pretty comfortable taking him on as a backup player. And I just really liked Cooper Kupp's ceiling. Granted, he's out right now and injured. But I kind of went away from the really, really deep running back core that I had last year, and I'm trying to move more over to the wide receiver group. I guess it's too early to say, but I feel like both of us felt like it made our teams better. I had a lot of extra draft capital, so I, in a way, gave up a couple picks to kind of move up to that first rounder that I like. But then Bo picked up a couple extra picks just to kind of help fill out his roster. So I don't regret any deals I made other than the Tony Pollard deal that I made to Stu. I traded Tony Pollard in the offseason. I just had it in my head that Jerry Jones was going to go trade up and get Bijan Robinson, and Tony Pollard was going to be non-existent. I just told myself that. So I sold Tony Pollard for way too cheap because he's going to have a big year. But other than that, I feel good about the decisions.
Yeah. And that trade that we made was not something that happened overnight. I mean, we went back and forth, I think, for a few days on that one, trying to put the pieces together. And by the time we actually made the deal, my eyes were kind of spinning, looking at it all. But yeah, I agree. It was a trade that made us both better. I needed help at running back. I gave up a little bit, and I feel like I'm struggling a little bit from a wide receiver's perspective, but I've got some young guys that are going to take some time to develop. But yeah, and then we made a second deal. I forget the specifics of it exactly. But we made a second deal, Dan, if you remember what was the what were the specifics of that one? That one wasn't as big as the Cook Barkley deal, but yeah, I mean, if I look back at from where I started when we originally drafted, and I think about this quite a bit, if we could go back and do a redraft from where we started, I think a lot of people would draft pretty differently, at least, outside of the first round. But yeah, my team has morphed quite a bit. And you guys talked about Stu's team and how he's kind of turned everything over from where we started. I feel, kind of the same, not quite as much, but we've made a bunch of deals. I acquired T. Higgins, who I didn't start with. I acquired Ramondre, who I didn't start with. Brees Hall came in the first rookie draft. Barkley. A lot of those guys are not guys that I started with. So we've had a couple of moves in there that feel good. I gave up Rashad Penny, to get Dallas Goedert, and it looks crappy now because he took the bagel in week 1. But I know they're going to come out and they're going to get him the football. So I feel good about that deal. Depending upon how Penny turns out, he's been injury prone in his career. So there's been there's some moves that are to be determined, but we feel good about where we're going and the direction that we're headed.
But the big thing, I know I told you this on our draft day this year. Yeah, I know we all would have changed some things about our original draft, but your success is going to come from how you can scout the rookies and how you can put those pieces together. Yeah. And I told you I like a lot of the guys you took this year. Obviously, you had the 101 last year in the rookie pick. You took the no-brainer, Brees Hall. He looked every bit back this weekend. You've got Marvin Mims, who is one of my favorite guys that was kind of flying under the radar. A-Chain's got a high ceiling, and then Anthony Richardson. So you have a lot of young guys with a very, very high ceiling potential in the next year or two.
Yeah, it's all going to come together, but it's going to take a little time. Like A-Chain's got to work his way through that backfield, and I think Mostert's going to get the majority of it. He's the guy that got the big number as far as the contract goes, and he's the old guy. He's the veteran in the room, but he's going to phase himself out, and he's had injuries in the past too. So I think A-Chain's going to get his carries and his touches in there. Mims is going to take some time, but that wide receiver group in Denver is pretty banged up, so I think he'll see some work early in the season.
Yeah, nothing ever moves fast in dynasty football, does it? It is. No. It's a slow build and it's a slow fall. I just feel like, well, I mean, not slow fall. It could be fast.
When you're spending first rounders.
Yeah, and it's slow, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm already looking forward to the rookie draft next year. That's my favorite part, just because But hey, I mean, we have a full football season to go yet, but yeah, I mean, I think you guys both improved yourselves on that was a pretty big trade at the time. I think you both improved your teams there. I did say, I think when I had to pick on who won that one, I think Bo won that one personally, because I wouldn't trade for a 30-year-old receiver, but I get it. I like the youth, I like my rookies and my youth because there's a little bit of a longer window there on them, but Cooper Kupp does make an immediate impact if he's on the field, of course.
Oh,
which
without
is
question. And
but
Stafford looks like he's back to peak performance right now too. He looked really good in
yeah,
week one.
that was a surprise this last weekend, them
But
beating
I
the Seahawks.
but I also have Cooper Cup's replacement, who I was so glad to sneak in on my roster because I picked up Puka right away. He was kind of my under the radar that no one had heard of. I've got him in almost all my leagues. His skill set is very, very similar to Cooper Cup. So him going to a Rams team with Sean McVay as that offensive coordinator. Now, granted, it's just week one, but I really like his long-term prognosis.
Yeah, they'll probably be able to slide right in when Cooper Cup does kind of start taking a couple steps back. So, well, anything else? You guys have any more thoughts on the league in general before we move into our favorite segment of the pod?
How about we give Fister some props this weekend, man? His team went off. And having the
Yes.
Cowboys defense put up 40 for you is a big piece of that. But yeah, him having Tyreek Hill and the Cowboys defense gave him a big boost. But yeah, his team it's built to win now, and it did that in week one.
Yeah, had he just had a normal defense, like a normal week, you just let's just call it 10 points. You know, he would have ended up with 142 points instead of 172. But still, that would have been second highest behind Dan for the week. But yeah, his team it's looking better and better. I'm not a big Deshaun Watson guy. I need to be proven wrong there. And I know Dan's not a fan because it impacts Nick Chubb greatly, but yeah, I mean Tyreek Hill, damn, like that's just a cheat code. I mean, between Tyreek Hill and the Cowboys, he had 84.5 points. Okay, so that's almost as much as I had put up in on all of my whole team. So and same with a little bit more and more than M actually in general.
Yeah.
She only had 80. So just imagine two of his players, including one being a defense, scored more than all of Emily's players this last
But
weekend.
did you also see he had Brandon Ayuk on the bench with
Yeah.
32.9?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And then he just made a move for him too. And I remember giving Emily a hard time about that. Like, hey, I mean, I offered her a first for Brandon Ayuk straight up like a week or two before that. And then to see a 1, 2, and 3 get Ayuk and Marquise Brown, I was giving her a hard time for that. I said I would have gave you way more than that. Next time you decide to start spinning some trades up with Bros, you let me know first. I'll give you a little more.
Yeah.
That's the deal, if you're not constantly harassing everybody, I know we all have wives and jobs and kids, but come on, man, respond. When I send you an offer, let's talk, right?
Yeah.
Send me
Yeah.
a counter. Let's figure something out. And I
Yeah.
tell them all the time, if you're going to make a deal, just call me. I might pay more. I might not, but I might.
Yep. I hear
We
you.
have a live roster move right now. Jonathan just dropped Justice Hill from the Baltimore backfield.
I believe he just
Just
picked him
dropped
up
him.
this last weekend too.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I mean, it is another awful thing. Another awful injury. If we can talk about that real quick before we kind of get
Yeah.
into our favorite podcast or our favorite segment. That was it was a really, really tough weekend to watch football for me. Besides the highlight was the Packers game, of course, but watching Aaron Rodgers go down Monday night and then the big trade that I had made, sending an early first round pick um, to move up 2 spots in our rookie draft, but also to receive J.K. Dobbins. That was going to be a guy that was supposed to be. I know he's been hurt a lot over his career, but he is incredibly effective when he's on the football field. So I thought that was going to be a guy that you're going to have a consistent in being out of contract year 2. I figured he was going to do everything he could to stay on the field and be productive, put up 15 points a game, and kind of pushed me over the edge here for the year. But watching, hey, he had the goal line touch. They gave him the ball at the goal line, just a funky tackle or kind of landing down over in the corner of the end zone and done just like that. So that's tough. Knowing that there was a good prospect there and in my grasp. I think this next offseason for a guy that's going to be sitting out all year on IR, and who knows if he's ever going to come back with that Achilles and with his knee and everything. So, well, let's wish those two Rodgers and Dobbins the best. We don't wish that on anyone. That's tough.
But Nick,
Yeah.
for our other league and those viewers, because we're gonna have a couple guests from that league,
Yep.
you actually just made a little trade for JK in
Mhm.
that league, and they were giving you a hard time. And I actually think it makes a lot of sense. Do you want to talk about what your thought process was there?
Yeah. So, well, somebody, whoever, I don't know. I'm not familiar with all of your buddies in that league. I don't know those guys yet, but the guy that owns J.K. Dobbins owned him, had him on his team. He said that he was anybody want J.K. Dobbins before I drop his glass ass was his comment, and I said, well, I might as well throw a trade offer out there, and so instead of maybe risk not picking him up in free agency, because I feel like a very good buy low candidate. If he does come back, like I said, he's an incredibly effective player on the field. So I sent a couple late firsts, future, or I'm not first,
Thirds.
thirds, future thirds, for JK, just to let him sit and see what happens in the future. Because if it pans out, man, that could be. I mean, it was a low risk, high reward kind of trade there, and those are the things. Something you gotta do that once in a while in dynasty. So
Yeah, and you have a couple extra picks from some deals and things like that. Everyone just looks at it on the surface level and they think, what does that do now? And it's stupid, but I think it's a really smart move. Those are the kinds of things that you got to try to do sometimes. He's still extremely young. It's going to be a long road back, but running backs, they're pretty in short order. So if he comes back healthy, somebody will take a stab on him.
yeah, and I think once too. I mean, granted, the three of us here have we have about a year and a half of dynasty fantasy football experience. Now these guys, that this is all their first years, and besides you and myself, correct? So
Some of them, yeah.
right. So, I mean, some people might look at it a little differently. Like, yeah, maybe a year from now, they'd be like, why not? Why not take a swing at something like that instead of just given the shit? But that's okay. I don't mind. I'd rather. I'm gonna wait this one out and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a track record of success with JK, because he struggled to come back from that knee injury last year, but when he finally got back to a point where he felt like he was healthy, he was back to being dynamic. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough with an Achilles injury now, so who knows what happens there? But I mean, he's come back from critical injuries before and still been a good player. So I think it's worth a shot.
Yep. So I'm gonna bark out this trade that we just had completed about in our fantasy league here. Dan, you were involved. You picked up Tua in a third for a future first and second. So you want to touch on that briefly?
Yeah, it's an overpay for a quarterback, for a non-running quarterback in our league settings. We're just one QB, 4 point. But I had Aaron Rodgers. He is now obviously done for the season. And then my other guy is Kyler Murray, who is also on IR, and we really have no idea what's going on with him. I did pick up Brock Purdy, I believe, for a third from John, or maybe I gave up a second and got Purdy in a third, something along those lines. Big Purdy fan, but while I am still in win now mode and I had 4 first round picks next year, I gave up my first round pick. So that should be a bottom three. So for me to do that trade, it's a little bit of an overpay if you look at the valuations, but to get Tua, who I was very high on in the offseason, I have him in my other big league. Um, as long as he doesn't get hurt, he is going to be an absolute stud. And I'm going to feel much more confident week by week going in with Tua than with Brock Purdy or with Sam Howell.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. Apparently, you and Emma are playing hot potato with Tua because you guys did this last year, where Emily had a couple injuries to her quarterbacks and you had traded her Tua. So now we're kind of flipping back a little bit. Yep,
And I mean,
injuries.
if I'm correct, I think he finished as the QB1 this week, did he not? So if talk about a sell high moment for M. I mean,
Mhm.
Tua comes out, slings it, is on pace for like 7,000 yards or whatever
Yeah.
this season, and just sell.
And for
And
her team, I was talking about it. She, and to all fairness to her, she's in sell mode, but she's not trying to sell people for free, right? She's got to
Right.
get value out of it. She's been selling everybody, but she's got a ton of picks. And honestly, for her right now, she's got Dak and CJ Stroud, who is a young guy with a very high ceiling in the next couple of years. She knows she's not going to compete this year. Picking up a first and a second round pick makes a ton of sense for her. especially in where she's at. She won the trade on paper. She's picking up more draft capital. Again, it helped me in win now mode. This is the kind of trade that makes perfect sense for both sides, in my opinion.
Yep, I would agree there.
Agreed too. Yeah.
All right, well, I think we're going to transition over into some NFL talk, and we need to start that off with our favorite segment on this podcast, and that was our favorite boy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So our boy Obi, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, he picked the dog last. Pardon the pun there. He picked the dog last week, but it worked out for him. So let's see what he's got to say this week, and we'll see what happens tomorrow night.
Yeah, we thought Obi was down to his old ways last week after going, what was it, 5-13 last year, I
I
believe.
think so, yeah.
And he took Detroit last week, and man, we're just like Obi, and he was right. So let's see if he might have another winner for us this week.
Welcome to week 2 of Obi's picks. Obi, you are off to a good start at 1-0, picking the Detroit Lions as an upset over the Kansas City Chiefs last week, buddy. Hey, no, yeah, little jump there. All right, well, we're going to have a NFC matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings tomorrow night. Should be a good game. All right, buddy, let's see who you got. Come on. He's going with the Eagles. He's going with the NFC champions to beat the Minnesota Vikings. See how you do, buddy. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm on board with Obes again this week.
From a winning perspective, I think Obi is correct to win that night. The Eagles had their way with the Vikings last year in a similar Thursday night, I believe. So you would expect that it's looking the same. I know the Vikings have a couple of guys on their offensive line that are going to be out this week. I think their center they came out is going to be out, and I think they're right. Even one of their tackles is going to be out as well. So that doesn't bode well going up against a pretty tenacious Eagles front seven.
Yeah. And the Eagles.
Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was going to say the Eagles didn't look overly impressive last weekend, but they're going up against a good Bill Belichick defense as always. And again, there was some crappy weather out there, so I believe they only won about, was it 26-20 or something similar to something close to that. But being at home this weekend, or I'm sorry, tomorrow, and going up against the Minnesota Vikings, that was very, very underwhelming last week against the Tampa Bay Bucks, who everybody thought they were going to kind of destroy at home. I think that's a really good pick for Obes, and like you said, that defensive front is brutal for a line that's completely healthy, let alone 2 starters out. So I'm not sure. That's going to be a tough one, a tough pick against the spread, being a 7.5 point spread right now. But I think in terms of picking the winner, I'm with Obes here on this one.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I mean, from a statistical standpoint, Kirk Cousins had a big week. He had 344 yards, but that was Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, 9 catches for $150. They had no run game, 17 carries for 41 yards. You take away Justin Jefferson, which Philadelphia's going to try to do. Are you going to be able to shut him down? Of course not. I just don't think with the injuries on the line, and with just the lack of explosiveness that Minnesota does not have other than Justin Jefferson, I think Philadelphia is just way too much. They struggled a little bit, but against a very underrated New England defense. And yeah, I think Philadelphia should handle this. Spread's a little high. I believe it started at 8 or 8.5. That's a little high, but Philadelphia, I don't think is going to have any problem. I just don't think Minnesota's going to be able to keep up.
No. I don't think so.
Yeah, and that was the game that we got in our area. Being in Wisconsin, we got the Viking game at noon on Sunday, and I caught a good chunk of it. Early in that game, Tampa had no answer for Justin Jefferson, but in the second half, he didn't really do a whole lot. And I think they kind of did a good job of holding down that Vikings offense, and it propelled them to a win. I mean, Tampa went on the road in week 1 and got a win in Minnesota, a team that no one really expected to do a whole heck of a lot. But you saw immediate regression from that Vikings team. Last year, they won every single 1-point game, and they come out right away in week 1 and they drop one. So something that you kind of could have seen coming from that Vikings team.
And it was
Yeah.
really Baker Mayfield in the second half and their front seven, Tampa's front seven. What is the strength of Philadelphia? Their front seven. I think Kirk
Right.
Cousins is going to have a long day in the pocket. He's going to put up some yards. JJ's going to have a game. But again, I just think that defense is going to be too much for Minnesota, and Philly's going to score at will. I don't think Minnesota's defense is good whatsoever. I mean, when Baker Mayfield is carving you up in the second half, what do you think Jalen Hurts is going to do?
Yep. Yep, not a good matchup for Minnesota this weekend. So, what about so we're gonna transition some NFC North talk since we kind of just got done with Minnesota Vikings. So we talk about the kind of I mean, we touched on briefly, but what do you guys think of the Detroit Lions so far in week one?
I'll go first, Dan, if you don't mind. I think this is and this is going to be kind of a trend throughout our conversation tonight, but this was a game that you really had to watch to get a good idea of what really transpired because, yes, the Lions won. Yes, the Chiefs lost at home. But if you look at this game and you kind of break it down, the Lions really didn't do a whole lot offensively except for a handful of drives. They maybe had 3 or 4 drives where they really consistently moved the football. Other than that, they were pretty stagnant. And I think you can attribute a lot of that to the Chiefs defense and the young, quick, fast guys that they have on that defense. And the Chiefs, I think Patrick Mahomes left a lot out on that field. I think he had a lot of throws that he could have made, guys that he missed in the route concept. So I think that this was, some sloppy football in week one. It was a great win for the Lions, and I think it's a great sell high spot for the Lions. If you're looking at going into next week at home, 6.5-point favorites against the Seahawks team that did not play well last week, I think this is a trap spot for the Lions coming in this week.
Dan?
Similar. I'm a huge Lions fan. Love Motor City Dan Campbell. I agree 100% because I watched the entire game. The Chiefs did not win. At the end of the day, the Lions win and they deserve the credit. If Patrick Mahomes, I hate playing the if game, but if Patrick Mahomes had any help, Kansas City wins that game.
Yep.
But he didn't. And the Lions made plays when they were supposed to. But the big takeaway, I think, from Detroit, what we've been talking about as they're an up-and-coming team, they expected to win. They did not go into Kansas City just trying to be, the upset, the underdogs. They expected to go in and win a game. Like it was their job. And I think that is genuinely their mindset, and it's going to be their mindset. Do they have enough talent to do that every week? Probably not. But that mindset that coaching staff and that culture that they're building – they're going to be a tough out every week. I love what Bo just said, though. That could be a huge trap game. Now we got to wait to see what Geno we get, because if we get Geno that we all know from past years, Detroit should win that game. But if we get Geno from last year, that's a big spread to cover. So I agree with Bo. But Detroit, man, you got to give them all the credit. They're building the team the right way. Their offensive line is nasty. Their defensive line is nasty. They're getting those guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, like you said, Nick. Goff made just enough plays to win the game.
Yep. Yeah, they have some good they need more help on offense, I would say, that Detroit doesn't. It doesn't help that Jameson Williams is out for the first month and a half of the season, but you could tell besides the running game, they had a little bit of success there, especially kind of when they got Jahmyr Gibbs on the outside, and there's a couple of good runs by David Montgomery, but you could tell they needed a guy to kind of spread the defense out and kind of burn the top off of them, because they're just kind of throwing a little bit of stuff over the middle. And Amon-Ra St. Brown's always going to get open. He's a hell of a receiver, but he needs help. He needs somebody. Those two are going to complement each other very, very well once Jameson does stay on the field. He hasn't been wasn't on the field much last year because of the ACL, but when he comes back and he's healthy and he quits getting in trouble, boneheaded, stupid decisions, I think those two are gonna complement each other really well, and then that offense could take another step. So, but yes, good flashes.
They were easing Gibbs in a little bit, right? They thought he was going to be on kind of a pitch count. I really feel like Dan Campbell in that offense, if he's the guy that they got to give the ball to, I do feel like once he's up and running, I feel like they're going to feed him. Montgomery looked actually a lot better than I expected. A lot of that, I think, can be attributed to that offensive line. But, you saw just kind of flashes of Jahmyr Gibbs, and to your point, he looks fantastic. But in the future, if they've got those close games, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get fed. So if you have any opportunity to pick him up in any dynasty leagues, which I don't know how you could, but I think he's a guy you go after right now. He is going to be an absolute monster in that offense.
100%. What
And
about
Aiden Hutchinson is a monster. And that dude, I think, is the truth. It took a little time to get him going, but he's got it, man. I think he's got it.
The motor. You could tell he's not quite as athletically gifted. I mean, he's still a world-class athlete. He's not Aaron Donald. He's not Myles Garrett, but the motor on that guy just does not stop, and just the constant pressure. He was getting so much pressure off the edge in that game. That really was the big difference. Mahomes just could not get comfortable.
Yep, I agree. Well, we have to talk about this. I mean, this is the oldest rivalry in football, and we thought
Not
we
right
were
now.
going to be.
It's not a rivalry right now.
Yeah,
it's just not.
But we weren't sure what to think going into the season. But we started off the year with Bears Packers in Chicago in that ugly Soldier Field. What did you guys think, man? That was I was very surprised, but happy on the result of that one.
Dan, I'll let you go first.
Yep, I'm cautiously optimistic. I do not want to get ahead of myself with the Green Bay Packers. I love that they got Aaron Jones involved. Here's a question though: do you guys know how many touches Aaron Jones had on Sunday?
I think he had 9 carries and maybe 3 catches, 3 catches. So let's just say not enough.
Yeah, I would have probably guessed 15 touches, maybe.
Yeah. Watching the game with how many big plays he had and looking at a stat line, you would have thought he had 20 touches. He only had 13.
Yeah.
So let's just hope he is still healthy, because as much as we love AJ Dillon is not at the same level as Aaron Jones. So I like that they got him involved. Love seeing Romeo Dubs stepping up. To your point about Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra, I think Christian Watson and Dobbs are going to be the perfect complement for each other. They're two very different players. So getting him back is, I think, going to give Jordan Love that much more confidence. But that is the one word that I would take away from week 1 is confidence. Great week 1 to build on. We know there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be a couple games that are just rough, but I will take the big week 1 over Chicago.
Yeah. And I expected, after watching the game, and when you texted me and asked me to come on this week, I thought, okay, I'm going to be that guy that comes in and puts a wet blanket on Jordan Love and the Packers, because I watched this game and I just did not feel impressed by what they did offensively. And then I watched some of it back, and I watched Jordan Love on 3rd down, and I watched him hit these 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 8s, and consistently convert on 3rd and 4th down. And I thought, what else can you ask from a quarterback? He was composed. He looked like he was collected. He wasn't really under pressure. The offensive line, I thought, played well. So I'm really impressed the more I think about it. He was good under pressure. And I thought the scheme was solid. There were a couple of, questionable play calls, but I think you're going to get that in every game. I think Matt LaFleur has a good control of this offense. And I think Jordan Love is a good player to kind of, point and shoot and get the ball where it needs to be. So I thought it was a game that they needed to start out and play well. The defense, I thought, flew around. They played well. Joe Barry, I thought, was a little bit more aggressive early in that game, which I think helped them kind of keep it under control and let the offense, kind of get their bearings. But the Packers scored on their first drive, which they really didn't do at all last year. And they came out after halftime and scored on that first drive. So I thought really that set the tone for the game, and they kind of just let the defense do what they do. And it was against the Bears team that's not really serious right now, but I thought it was a good confidence boost to get the year going.
And a healthy Rashawn Gary gives us that extra little dynamic that we were missing last year.
Yeah, he was definitely on a pitch count here this week, and I think he will be for a little while yet. But when he was out there, he was usually the 3rd and long kind of situations. But when he was out there, he he was making a big impact. But to your point, Bo, I was not and everybody knows I've preached this from day one when they drafted Jordan Love. Not impressed with the draft pick, not impressed with any of it. I wanted Aaron Rodgers to retire as a Packer. I wanted all of that. But he did, I will say he did look, he looked solid and like you said, looked comfortable in that pocket, and with that touchdown throw to Romeo Doubs on that slant across the middle. There was guys all around him in the pocket there. It was closing in on him, and he stood in there and made a good throw. So I was happy to see that, and I'm not gonna keep bashing the guy. I'm gonna just take a step back and try to enjoy this year and see what he can do. But hopefully, hey, I think that he's going to be trending upward here for a little while for this season. And hopefully I don't think it's possible to get 3 franchise quarterbacks in a row, but hey, if we can do it, why not? Let's take it and run for another 10, 15 years.
And on the other end of that, Nick, I know where you stand with Justin Fields. You've never been a big fan. You're not really a believer. I thought the Justin Fields, the second half of last season, he's the real deal. So I'm curious, Bo, what are your thoughts? Not week 1, but what you saw from Fields last year and now coming into this year with the additions of DJ Moore, the team trying to rebuild back through the draft. How do you feel about Fields and the Bears?
This is exactly where I was going to go. And I think it's a perfect opportunity to talk about where you land as a quarterback and the position that you're put in with the surroundings that you have dictate almost as much as your talent. You saw it with Patrick Mahomes, and I think you're seeing it on the flip side with Justin Fields because he's not getting any schematical help from that Bears coaching staff. He's got Matt Eberflus, who's a defensive-minded coach, and you look at the other side with Jordan Love. He's got Matt LaFleur, who's an offensive-minded coach. He's like a nurtured baby. He kind of just gets, he's got a hand that's holding him along, teaching him the offense, kind of just scooting him a little bit closer every time. And Justin Fields is not getting that. And you can see it in that offensive scheme. They just kind of hope that he plays well and makes miraculous plays. And that's not how you teach a quarterback. That's not how you bring a guy along. That's not how you groom guys to be successful. And I think it's ultimately going to lead to his demise. He's an athletic freak, so that kind of raises his floor a little bit. But as a passer, he just isn't there. He's not seeing the field. He's not making the appropriate reads. And you saw it with the pick 6 that he threw. He threw it straight to Quay Walker. It's like he didn't even see him on the field. And that's a guy that's not seeing the field properly. So I'm out on Justin Fields. I always have been. I'm out on Ohio State quarterbacks until I'm proven wrong. And Justin Fields is just a part of that.
Yep, I agree. Hey, did you guys see that? It reminds me, did you get and talking about, I mean, yes, he got some help in DJ Moore. I think that was a really good addition. But the other guy that they brought in to help Justin Fields is Chase Claypool. And I'm not sure if you guys saw that video of him, because obviously it's hard when you're watching the game on TV. There's a lot going on, and people typically watch the ball, right? But Chase Claypool, I'm not sure if you saw that clip of all of these plays. And they're on offense. He just does not want to be there. He doesn't care. He's not trying. He's not holding up his blocks. And he was like just a waste of space, and it's unfortunate that they gave up an early 2nd round pick to get him in. But that guy is not going to help. And I've honestly, if we can see it, coaches will definitely see it. And they should be sending him. He should be running or doing sprints this week in practice to try to get a lighted fire under his ass. But other than that, if that doesn't work, I mean, I know they're adults and they're professional athletes, but I would not be playing him as much as they did this last year. If he's not going to give a shit, then he shouldn't be out there. So there's a lot of guys out there that would die to be in his position, and for somebody not to give a shit out on the field, man, that was tough. It's tough to see that kind of stuff, and for a young offense. Not that I'm rooting for the Bears, but
yeah.
Could you imagine trading a 2nd round pick even in fantasy for him?
No.
Well, and so you think back at the way that all kind of went down. The Bears had Roquan Smith on their team. He could have been their focal point of that defense. Traded him away for a 2nd round pick and used that 2nd round pick within the same week to trade for Chase Claypool. I don't understand that team is that front offense. It's like they don't know what they're doing. They have good players. they trade them away for bad players, and it's just a cycle. And now that offense again is bad. People had hope for that offense, and again, it looks like a college team.
If only those real life GMs would take some words of advice from us, make believe GMs, they could be a little bit more successful in their careers.
Yeah. You wonder. I understand that like GMs don't want to pay big contracts, send big contracts out to players on losing teams. Like I understand that, and it's tough to do that. But Roquan Smith has always been a game changer, and you really kind of wonder on that move for sure. I mean the Ravens turned around and paid him right away, and then not to mention that second that free agency hit opened up, the Bears went out and spent a ton of money on 2 inside linebackers. So I don't know who would you. I mean I've always been a big Tremaine Edmonds fan because he's so big and athletic, but I mean still I'd rather have Roquan Smith than TJ Edwards, though. That's for damn sure. So I don't know. It's kind of don't know what the hell's going on there.
But at least they got a really good tight end in Cole Kmet for $50 million.
Yes, they sure did. All right. Well, hey, I am gonna get you guys. I'm gonna get your brains moving a little bit. So I have a little game for you, and this is called Pick the Alma Mater in the NFC West edition. Okay. So I got what's going to happen is I have 3 tiers. So I picked 3 players in each tier. And for tier 1, you get 1 point if you get it correctly, and you get another point if you get them correct, get which round correctly that these players were drafted in. So obviously you're going to be trying to pick what college they went to. And same thing with 2 and 3. 2 is 2 points, and then a 1 point if you get the round, and then tier 3 is 3 points, and then another additional point if you get what round they were taken in. So I think that you guys are I think this is a good, well suited for you. I know Dan, you have just a ton of absurd knowledge up in that brain that I don't know how you do it. So, and I know Bo, you're a football guy yourself, so I think this will be fun and entertaining. So we're gonna have to try to keep this. If we could do this all night long, so I'm gonna try to keep this quick. Don't be cheating. No cheating now, no looking up answers, but try to keep this out. I'm going to try and pump these out relatively quick. So tier 1, again, this is an NFC West edition, which means we have 7 more. We can do this over the course of this year. So player number 1, Rondale Moore. You want to write your answers down quick and then around. Ooh. I thought this was the recently new pick, so I thought we were gonna have it. All right, Bo, you look like you're ready.
Are we doing these all individually?
Yep. No, we're gonna nope. Flip them up right away. I'm gonna keep track. So we're gonna then we'll keep track as we go. So, what do you got? I'm gonna keep this. There we go. Purdue, Dan. Who do you got?
Was it not Purdue?
Yep. You are Bo. You are correct. You didn't get your round on there, but Bo, you got a point. All right,
it really
here we
Purdue?
go.
Holy shit, that was just a guess.
It is Purdue. Yes, very good. All right, next is Cam Akers. This one was tough. I didn't know this one. Dan knows this one.
I don't know this one.
Don't look at the screen, Bo. Dan, that'll be a solid 2 points for you, buddy. Oh, you got the round right, but you did not get the school right there, Bo. All right.
Where did he go?
He went to Florida State.
Was it Florida State? Yeah, I would
have got that one wrong. This one I think is probably the easiest out of 3, but Arik Armstead, the defensive tackle for San Francisco.
I don't know this one either.
oh boy. I mean, you guys are gonna be in trouble here. That was only tier 1.
I don't remember him getting drafted either.
Well, I'm sorry, boys. You're both wrong. It was Oregon in round 1, actually.
He was
that's why I thought that you guys would have known that one, because usually everybody watches that first round on Thursday nights. Okay, so here we go to tier 2, and then let's start off with Tyler Lockett.
Holy smokes, this is going way back.
Yeah, there's only going to get harder. I wasn't going to take it easy on you guys.
No, that's fair.
Complete guess.
Yeah.
Is it?
So,
Nope. SMU, that would be that was Antonio Brown, I believe, but 7th rounder. So Tyler Lockett actually went to Kansas State and was drafted in the 3rd round by Seattle.
See, I had the colors right.
Yep. Yep. Okay, next, Cooper Kupp. This is a tough one.
gosh, I don't know this one either, man. See, Cooper Kupp, his career didn't really start until later, so I don't even remember.
Bo, what do you got for us, buddy?
I don't even have a school. I'm gonna guess the round.
Nope. You were close, Dan. Eastern Washington, not Eastern Illinois. And he was in the 3rd round. Okay, and we're going back to the defensive side of the ball here, fellas. Buda Baker on the Arizona Cardinals.
See, I like Buda Baker a lot, and I wish he didn't play for the Cardinals. I wish the Packers would trade for him, but I don't remember where he went to college.
I should be better at this game because B. Myers, who's in our other league, Nick, he and I talk about, we watch the draft as tradition. I go to his house every year to watch the draft. We talk draft all the time. We go back and we look at draft classes to see how bad teams' ideas were.
Yeah.
So I should be a lot better at this.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a whopping 2 points each so far.
Buda Baker.
Unimpressed right now, fellas.
Complete guess.
That would be actually Washington. In the 2nd round.
That's what I meant for. Yeah, him and
Lockett. Oh, okay. All right. So, this is going to be the only player that I have on the list here. We're moving on to tier 3. You both have only 2 points. So, this is the only player on this list of 9 that is not on the original team that drafted him. And this is you're going to get an extra point. There's going to be a total of 5 points available on this. And this is just going to get harder now. I'm telling you, I was taking it easy on round and tier 1. But if you can get where he went to school, what round, and what his original team that drafted him, you're going to get a whopping 5 points here, and that could push you over the edge on, especially in this little round here we got going on.
If you wanted to start easy, you would have given us like Deebo Samuel and Matt Stafford. And
I don't even know where Deebo Samuel went. Is it Clemson?
South Carolina.
See, I didn't know that one either.
See, I know Matt Stafford, but yeah, they have two Georgia boys at quarterback.
Fun fact, I saw Matt Stafford's first ever home game in Athens, Georgia. Had no idea who he was, but he was the #1 recruit out of high school. Everybody that lived in Georgia was talking about the guy. It was the 1 year I lived there. Between the Hedges, awesome stadium, awesome tailgating, by the way, and he killed it.
As a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I believe he's a true freshman, too.
All right, you ready?
Go for it.
Javon Hargrave, defensive tackle for San Francisco. Just brought him in from... I told you it was going to be tough. I
don't know where he went to school.
I couldn't take it easy on you. I'm sorry. I had to make this tough.
I feel like I should know this one.
We should get some Jeopardy music for next time.
Yeah.
People watching this are going to think we know no football, Bo.
We don't know football.
Michigan State. Ooh, and Philly. So he did come from Philly here, but he was originally drafted by the Steelers. Okay. And he went to South Carolina State in the 3rd round. Tough one. I know it's tough. I'm not, and we got a couple. I feel like you may get the last one.
How do we not know South Carolina State players, Bo? Come on.
I don't think I've ever watched a South Carolina State game in my life.
I've probably bet on one of their games at one point in my life.
All right. Moving on to the 8th player, we have Will Disley, tight end in Seattle.
Gosh, he didn't even play tight end in college, I don't think. I think he played like a defensive spot, didn't he? I thought I don't know.
He does, doesn't he have that nice long hair, Will Disley?
I think he's a blondie too, isn't he?
Yep. Okay. Nope.
So,
Dan, he's still in Seattle, but the only Hargrave was on a different team. But I will. Nope. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to kind of bring this down a little, make this a little easier for next time. But Will Disley was taken out of the fourth round from Seattle, out of Washington, actually. So he's
mm.
staying in the Pacific Northwest.
See,
And to close,
Nick's picking all these Pac-12 teams, guys that we don't watch over here in Wisconsin.
I was just picking random players. I was just kind of going through the north, or the NFC West. I'm like, I don't want to. Obviously, I'm not going to pick the third string offense or the left guard, but I have to give you some
Well,
guys you knew.
you just picked a fourth string tight end.
I think he's second string behind Noah Fant. All right, one more. Ben Skowronek on the Rams.
Oh, the wide receiver fullback, like hybrid guy,
He's a
Ben
wide receiver.
Skowronek.
I think, isn't he number 18? Skowronek.
Yeah, I think McVay has gotten cute and lined him up in the backfield.
Oh wait, that was Puka.
Well, oh boys, this was a little bit of a disappointment. I'm sorry if I left it a little too tough for you, but he was drafted from Northwestern in the 7th round, actually.
Ooh, so I
Yeah.
had the seventh. I had the seventh round.
Yep, but you didn't get the college right there, Bo.
Nope.
Got to get the college right to get that extra point. So, well, that
right,
was
here. We'll do a tiebreaker.
Okay.
I'll ask a question. Bo, if you get this right, you win. We'll stick with that division. What college and what round was Kyler Murray picked from?
Oh,
He went to the University of Oklahoma and he was the #1 overall pick.
yep. There you go. See, that's a little easier.
Yeah,
Our
that's
winner.
a little bit easier.
Bo is our winner.
Thanks for giving me that one, Dan. That was
Nick,
nice.
we'll do better. We'll do better.
Well, I guess that was a little tough. I will keep that in mind for next time when we move on to a different division. But
That was fun though. Bring that back. That was
yeah,
good.
we're gonna have to get the brain working a little bit on a Wednesday night. So, well, let's get into.
If you would have told us what the game was, Bo and I all day would have just been reading like former draft lists. Like, who was the 17th pick in the 5th round? Yeah, that's right.
Of course, I know you would have been, but I can't give it to you that easy. Now you guys have a heads up for me next time. So, all right. Well, should we dive into our predictions?
Do it.
Let's do it. So, yeah,
Player
it's gonna be
of the week actually last week, you guys.
Bo, go ahead.
I mean, it's Tyreek Hill. That guy was an absolute monster. There was no coverage for him on the field. I'm really, really disappointed in the Chargers defense that they let him get away so much, but there was no covering. There was no stopping him. Tua looked, I think, fantastic. Got him the football when he needed to. The ball was on time, on target. Tyreek Hill propelled Fister to a win. He was my player of the week, and I don't think there's much competition for him.
Nope. In terms of one singular player in fantasy this week, I would agree 100%. But I'm going to take 11 of them, and that's going to be the Cowboys' defense, special teams, 7 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, and they had 1 touchdown. I thought they had 2 touchdowns. I believe they had 2 touchdowns. But let me just double check.
We might have our first mistake of the year, Nick.
Well, Sleeper says they had 2 touchdowns, but and I believe
I think they did. Didn't they have a pick six and a punt return?
0 points allowed, 7 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 2 interceptions and 1 tutty.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see 1 block and 2 touchdowns, but either way.
Oh,
that was also their special teams. Did they have a punt return for?
Yeah, I just looked I looked at the game log and it doesn't say it, but
they were dominant is what they were. And Daniel Jones did not have any chance.
And a 40 points. I mean, yeah, and Bros just happened to have both these players on his team, as we kind of talked about a little bit earlier.
Here's a stat for you. In the last 4 years, just looking at Sleeper, tackles for loss in the entire 2019 through 2022 seasons, 76, 54, 72, and 93. That's over a 16 or 17 game season. They had 10 tackles for loss
Oh,
against a playoff team from last season.
yeah. Yep, they were and I know that rain had something to do with it, but oh my God, Micah Parsons is unbelievable. And I know I sent a text out last weekend about son of a gun, who is it going to be holding out for a big contract next year? Is going to be the highest paid defensive player of the year as of next year. Is that son of a bitch? Who was that?
Micah.
Yeah, Micah.
Micah, who is he? I thought there was somebody else that I sent a text out about him being. There's another one coming out next year. Maybe it was Micah, but Micah is worldly. Just he can do everything. It's unbelievable. So that was such an amazing pick by the Cowboys. There can build just a freak, just a fucking freak.
Jerry has been drafting pretty well the last couple of years. He really has. He's drafted correctly. He hasn't gone and reached for people that he shouldn't be. I don't know if it's more he's just listening to the people that are in the room, but he's made some good decisions. They've been pretty smart with where they've given their cap space outside of the Ezekiel contract. Speaking of contracts, New York Giants, $160 million guy.
Yeah. Who is that again? I can't remember.
Can light that bag on fire.
But hey, I mean, if you look at it, Jerry Jones' drafting strategy is relatively simple. Wisconsin offensive linemen, Big Ten defenders.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Who do we got for predictions for next week? Bo, if you want to start out with who you think's going to be your guy you're watching.
Yeah, so I'm going with a divisional matchup, and this is a big spread. I like Deebo Samuel to have a big game against the Rams. The Rams are starting Aaron Donald and a bunch of teenagers, and they had their way with Geno Smith last week. But I think Kyle Shanahan is a little bit different monster, and I think Deebo Samuel is the guy that has a big week.
Yeah, I like that pick, and I'm gonna go with a guy on your team, Bo, Saquon Barkley against a very, very bad Arizona Cardinals team, and they hung in there with the Commanders this last weekend, but I think that's just kind of due to the inexperience of Sam Howell. But I think the Giants are gonna they're gonna come back after that bad loss, and I think they're gonna kind of run through the Cardinals, and Saquon's gonna be at the center of it.
Do you guys think that Deebo is the guy that, not counting Christian McCaffrey, but with Brock Purdy spreading the ball around as much as he does, as he should in that offense, you got George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo. Do you think Ayuk is taking over as that number one guy outside of McCaffrey, or would you guys stick with Deebo?
This is so hard. This is so hard because that offense is one of, I think, arguably one of the best collections of offensive skill talent in the NFL right now. There's so many ways to turn, but I think Deebo is a guy that you still have to account for because of the versatility. He's very similar to Christian McCaffrey, but more of a wide receiver where McCaffrey leans more running back. But I think he's just so athletic, and I think he was a little disappointed by the way he played last year, that he came in and there was a spark underneath him. And I think he's in really good shape. And I think the way that Kyle Shanahan likes to get him involved and move him around the offense, I think he's the go-to guy. Yes, Brandon Ayuk is more wide receiver, so he's going to catch more passes, but they like to get Deebo the ball and they like to get him in space. And I think he's athletic enough to really hit home runs. And I think there's certain weeks where he's going to really pop off.
Yeah, and I don't think that Brandon Ayuk would be the number one option. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not a very good receiver. He is, but like you said, Dan, they spread the ball around a lot in San Francisco, and Brock Purdy does a very good job of doing that because they have a lot of mouths to feed. They have a lot of talent, but at that point, you're just playing matchup. And I think it just happened to be this last weekend that against that Brandon Ayuk was the guy that was open a lot more this last week. But I wouldn't say that he would be a better option in the passing game than Brandon Ayuk. I think Debo's gonna have his days. And I think Brandon Ayuk's going to have his days, but I think at the end of the year, Debo is going to end up with some more receiving yards.
Big fan of Big Cock Brock.
Big Cock Brock. I'm a big fan
Big
of George Kittle. You know, I figured this out that I would have won our fantasy league last year had I not traded away George Kittle.
Yep. Poor guy,
if I started
man.
him all year, I would have won.
I have a really interesting stat for you guys, though. McCaffrey had going back, 152 yards on the ground off 22 carries. He had 13 carries that went for 3 yards or less.
Yeah.
Oh,
13 carries. I believe
out
he
of
had
22.
he had 4 or 5 that went for negative or 0. He was not getting big holes all game, but when he did, he was gone. And that is the
Yeah.
difference between an average NFL running back and a Christian McCaffrey. Because I was watching the game and I was getting so frustrated. I own Bo, just so you know, I own Christian McCaffrey in all 6 of my leagues. All 6.
You could say that
I
you're invested.
I am slightly invested. So when he popped that 65 yarder, I was like, all right, we'll take a couple more 1 yard rushes. But 13 of his 22 rushes were for 3 yards or less. But his value is gonna come in those big plays, and they're gonna happen often in that San Francisco offense.
You know, it's that wide zone offense, right? So you play to the boundary, and when you do that from a running game perspective, you're going to have negative runs, and that's something you see with the Dolphins offense too, is they run that same wide zone scheme, and you take negative plays, but then when you get guys into space and the blocks line up correctly,
Gone.
gone. You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Very similar. Like I like your point. Very similar offenses, not from a play calling perspective, but from what they're trying to do.
Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna see that, and you're gonna continue to see that too from the more that we kind of have this branch of coaches coming off, kind of that Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel's kind of coach. They're gonna, I think that's gonna become more the norm, because it's not just a run between the tackles over and over and over again anymore. They're spreading these guys are too athletic, and they're gonna try to give them some space, and you're seeing that, and those offenses are electric.
All right. Do you guys want to go into some locks and upsets right away?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm psyched for this because I think we got a couple of good ones here.
Yeah, so last week, Nick and myself, I just put myself as the guest last week because I will not be making lock and upset picks. That'll be for Nick and our guest. I went 1-1. I went the easy route. I took the Baltimore Ravens. They did not play well, but they got the win, as they should have. I had the Tennessee Titans on the road at New Orleans. They did cover the spread, but they did not win. So I started 1-1. Nick, you want to remind us of our 2 picks from last week that you had?
So I know that Dan, you disagreed very, very profusely with me about that. When I said I thought the Raiders were going to beat the shit show in Denver. I did take the Raiders, and believe it or not, they did win 17-16. So that was a good feeling there. And my other one was, gosh, I just told you about this earlier. Oh, I took Minnesota over Tampa, and we touched on that earlier. That was pretty rough to watch Minnesota. But believe it or not, Tampa Bay still has a good defense, and so I ended up and they shut them down. So I came out 1-1 last week as well.
But if you're gonna lose one, you might as well lose one when you take the Vikings, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So
Right,
just to
so
okay,
here's what we got this week. If you want to start, Bo, you've got the New Orleans Saints, who pulled out a week 1 win, but were a little hot and cold there with Carr behind center. Why are you taking New Orleans this week?
yeah, so this isn't so much a pick for the Saints. Don't get me wrong, he certainly is. I'm a big fan of Derek Carr, and I think he's really good for the Saints offense. But this is a pick against their opponent, and that's the Panthers. I have no interest in this Panthers team. I have no interest in this Panthers offense. I don't think their defense is that very good. I think they have pieces on that defense that can be solid. But I really like the Saints going on the road against the Panthers. One thing that I thought was really shocking, and I didn't know, I knew this, it was in my brain, but Bryce Young is small, man.
Yeah.
He is tiny, and you get him out there and you put him behind an offensive line and look at him in comparison to some of these guys, it's alarming. And I think it's a problem for this Panthers team. And I'm not saying that because you're on here, Nick. I don't want to rattle your bones here because you've got him on your fantasy team, but I think it's a problem. I think he's really small, and the fact that they took him #1 overall, I think could come back to bite them. But I like the Saints both to win and to cover in Carolina. I think this is a really good spot for them.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One thing, you guys know I'm a big Chris Olave guy, and he was not getting the ball early in that game. And the Saints were struggling a little bit. And then he got cooking. He ended with 8 for a buck 12. Carolina's got a pretty decent secondary, but I agree. I think the Saints defense is just too good. I don't think Carolina's going to be able to score enough. Nick, you are going to go a little bit more friendly with a little bit of easier pick, but hey, it's a lock of the week. We play to win the game. So why do you have San Francisco against the Rams?
Well, I mean, we just kind of talked about that. I mean, with the when we were talking about the 49ers offense, and Bo, you made a very good point. It's Aaron Donald and a bunch of teenagers out there, and I think the Niners are going to run through. And I'm not sure if they'll necessarily cover. I think that they will. I mean, it's getting that's a tough number being that hook. But I think the 49ers, this will be an easy win for them. I understand that Matt Stafford looked pretty solid, but at the same time, that defense in San Francisco is much better than Seattle. So overall, a much better team, and I think this is going to be an easy win for San Francisco against the Los Angeles Rams.
All right. And then, Nick, we'll stick with you. You have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who got absolutely trounced by those 49ers last week.
That's right.
Offense looked just lost. Defense, which they have a very good defense, but San Francisco is just too much. But San Francisco or the Steelers are only getting 1.5 at home against a Cleveland Browns team that looked really good last week. Why are you picking Pittsburgh this week in the upset?
So the Pittsburgh Steelers are just perennially just a really good team, and they're always going to be there. And I understand that it was they came up against a kind of a juggernaut or just a really tough team in San Francisco last year. The offense did not help them out, which is why I think the score kind of got out of hand. But that I think is credit to that good San Francisco defense. But this is a divisional game, and you know how divisional games go in the NFL. Man, they are always tough and they're always close. So, and I understand that the Brownies looked pretty solid against Cincinnati, but I think that again there was some bad weather there, and I think there's going to be some big changes to that offense in Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett looked really good towards the end of the year last year. He looked good in the preseason. I think he's going to have a big game. Matt Canada, he should have been fired the day after he was hired. But you know what? I think that guy's fucking trash. I'm sorry, but I think they're gonna especially only being 1.5 underdogs. It's gonna be a close one, but I think they're gonna squeeze this one out in against the Browns.
Yeah, and those NFC or AFC North games used to, they used to be so tight. You'd have games that finished like 9-6, 10-7.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they're at home, right? So I don't think that's a terrible pick. Bo, you are taking this is kind of a surprise to some of us. I think a lot of us went into the season thinking Seattle was going to be one of those teams that could make another jump this year. Did not look very good, and you're picking them on the road to upset the Detroit Lions, who just beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Why are you riding with Seattle in week 2?
Yeah, and this is a sell high spot for me on the Lions. I think that this is a team that still has much left to be desired from a defensive perspective. We touched on Aiden Hutchinson. I think they're starting to put things together from an offensive perspective, but that defense still is a work in progress. I'm a little nervous as we get through this week. It sounds like both of Seattle's tackles might be out, so I might regret this. I might have to eat this pick, but from a pure spot perspective, I like the Seahawks to come back and play better than they did at home against the Rams. They had 2 offensive yards in the second half of that game. You cannot play worse than that. And there's a saying that goes around the NFL, you're not as bad as your worst game, you're not as good as your best game. Everything kind of comes back around. And I think this is a team that has too much firepower on offense. This is a number that's way too big. I like the Seahawks to definitely cover this 6.5 point spread. And I think this is a trap spot for the Lions. I think that this is a game that could end up in an upset. And I think the Seahawks could win this game outright.
I like that. And then I have one bonus for you guys. This isn't going to count on the record, but just curious on your thoughts. We haven't talked about the matchup. This is another team we haven't talked about. Jacksonville at home getting 2.5 against the Kansas City Chiefs. We don't know if Travis Kelce's going to play yet, but with the drops last week, with Kansas City not really helping Mahomes, the Jaguars struggled at times against Indianapolis Colts, but were able to pull it out. Curious what you guys feel on a very closely matched game in Jacksonville this week.
Yeah, if you look back and when these two teams met up in the divisional round last year, it was a go either way game for a long time. And the Jags didn't quite have enough down the stretch but they were in that game. They could have won that game. They had chances offensively and they squandered them. I think this is a game that's very good again. But I'm going to stick with Mahomes. Getting less than a field goal is a fantastic spot. I would take the Chiefs in this game, but I think it's close and I think it's a fun one to watch.
It'll be very fun, and I think a guy that was kind of gone and out of everybody's mind for the last few years, and Calvin Ridley. Holy shit, did he have a breakout game last weekend? That Jaguars team, and yeah, they're kind of beating around the bush there with the Colts for until the fourth quarter, but clearly Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the weapons that Trevor Lawrence does, and Trevor Lawrence is looking. He was making some throws last week in that, which is why he was the number one overall pick a couple of years ago, and why he was the best quarterback prospect to come into the NFL draft since Peyton Manning. So I think that's a very, very close game. But if you're taking the spread, I mean, yeah, that's a tough one, being that 2.5 only need a field goal for the Chiefs, but their offense needs some work. And Travis Kelce, I was listening to a podcast that had a bunch of NFL doctors that or one of them was an NFL doctor, and they had a bunch of other doctors together, and they kind of talk about players' injuries around the league. And they said that last week, right before the game, they took about 50 milliliters approximately, or cc's, 40 cc's, which is one of them is equivalent to a milliliter. So about 50 milliliters of blood out of his knee. And they were running Travis Kelce in the pool. They weren't even doing any contact. So, and the guy that was on a sideline doctor for the Chargers for many, many years said if they're pulling blood out of his knee and they're not even putting him on the ground, I don't even think it's not looking good for him this week. So we'll see if they don't have Kelce again this week. Granted, I'm just repeating the message. This is not me. I am not a doctor. I am not any of that. But if Kelce doesn't play again this week, it's going to be a really tough matchup, I think, for Kansas City.
They are going to get Chris Jones back though, which I think is a big piece.
Yes.
And Kansas City's defense is slightly underrated. They've got, Bo, you mentioned it before, they've got a little bit of speed. They don't have a ton of big names, but they've got some speed. And you've got to remember, too, the amount of drops. That should not continue. My hot take of the night, look for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to maybe get involved a little bit more this game. He actually didn't look bad with his limited touches this last week. I also don't think Kelce is going to play, but if he does, I just feel like you've got to take Kansas City at the 2.5 here. But that's going to be my game of the week outside of our Green Bay Packers game, which, Nick, I know you're going to bring up right now. But Chiefs, Jags, can't wait to watch that game.
Yeah, and I think if one more point, I mean, even if Tony does catch, like, we don't have any drops this week, and Tony catches the balls like he dropped last week, Jacksonville still kind of might have more weapons than Kansas City does right now, especially if Travis Kelce doesn't play. So that's going to make things a lot more interesting. And their offense is a lot better than Detroit's. So we'll see. And I know that Kansas City's young on defense, but to your point that they are bringing Chris Jones back, it'll be a little bit more interesting. But it's a whole different animal.
We can't move on from that. Nick just dropped Jacksonville's offense is much better than Detroit's. Are we sure about that? I don't know. I think that's a little bit closer than.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I don't know. I'll take the QB, but much better. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think that's when we could go back and forth.
Besides Amon-Ra, though, who did they really have? They don't really have anybody to throw to. That's the thing.
From Raymond, I believe, was their number 2.
Yeah.
From a weapons perspective, I would give you, but I love that Detroit offensive line, and I think it's a difference maker. I think that can be it can be a road grading offensive line, and I think that's a team that could run away with with the game again. If you were to match those two up, I'm not a huge fan of the Jacksonville defense, which is why I think that Kansas City could win that game and certainly cover the 2.5. But I think that's a big difference there with that Jacksonville defense and the Chiefs offense. I think that's a mismatch.
I would agree
My
with you. I
my
should have.
worry though, Jacksonville was unable to put away Indianapolis with a rookie quarterback, no running back, and a pretty rough shot defense. And it took 3.5 quarters to put them away. If Kansas City gets up like Indianapolis does, coming off of a loss in week one, I don't think that bodes well for Jacksonville. With that being said, I don't know if Kansas City has the same amount of firepower to get that 2 touchdown lead in Jacksonville.
Good point.
And you're right, Bo. I should have clarified. The weapons are better. I would agree with you
Yeah.
100% that the offensive line is much better in Detroit. So, but
It's a go either way one.
yeah. Well, there is one, if we're gonna do a little Packers talk quick. We are going to get to see our favorite boy in Bijan Robinson this week all game long.
Did you say
God.
our favorite boy or your favorite boy?
Oh my! Did you see the move that he put on that DB on when he it was dirty? How do you go from full sprint to stop to sprinting again that fast? It was unbelievable. Can't wait to watch him this week. I think the Packers are going to squeak this one out. They've got I just think that they're going to move too fast for this Falcons offense, and our defense they looked pretty solid last week against Desmond Ridder. I think they're gonna squeeze this one out. What do you guys think?
Oh, I think this is a go either way game, because what Atlanta has proven that they want to do is that they want to run the football. They're going to take the ball out of Desmond Ridder's hands, and they're going to pound the rock with their two-headed backfield of Algier and Robinson. And I think you're right. I think Robinson and Gibbs, those two running backs that went in the first round, those dudes are the truth. And I think the Packers have their hands full with this Atlanta offense and their run game. The Packers defense was good against the run game of Chicago, but I think that's a step down in class. So I think this is one that kind of goes either way. I bet you it's probably a 21-24 game. So I think it's close. It's, I think, a 1.5 point spread. So I don't really think that matters much. But I think you're right. I think if I had to pick a winner, I think the Packers win this one close.
Dan?
I want to be cautiously optimistic because Atlanta plays so slow that I don't know if they're going to allow Green Bay to get a ton of momentum to get that couple score lead. But I do feel with the confidence of Jordan Love, sounds like Christian Watson is a probable at this point. I don't think it's been made official yet, but I just feel like Green Bay is just going to have too much team speed on both sides of the ball, specifically on the defensive side. Bijan's great. Drake London really didn't do anything last week. Kyle Pitts didn't do much, but those guys are still pretty solid. But I think Green Bay's team speed on defense is just going to be a little bit too much. I've got Green Bay with a 7 to 10 point win, probably 27 to 13, 27 to 17.
I was going to say probably closer to 31 to 17 if I had to have it take a score, because I agree. I think they're going to be too much. It's just, and I think, I think Bijan and I think Algier are going to both have very, very good days, but I just think that they're, in terms of the overall matchup, I just don't think this bodes well for Atlanta this week.
Yeah. And we talked, we said we don't want to have overreactions. I didn't want to overreact that we beat a Bears team that we have to remember is still not very good. Yes, Green Bay did what they should, and they looked really good doing it, but we were supposed to beat a very bad Bears team. If Justin Fields doesn't play well, Chicago's not going to win. So do you guys feel like if we go into Atlanta this week and we lose, are the alarm bells going to go off? Are people going to overreact right away? Or are we going to be able to just kind of move along?
Well, and so this goes back to the beginning of the year when a lot of people didn't really know what to do with Jordan Love, right? And you saw that last week when the Packers were underdogs in Chicago. When was the last time that was the case? But I think that's a part of nobody really knew what Jordan Love was. We had seen bits and pieces of him play. We'd seen him start one game. We'd seen him play in a couple other games. But now that we've got a full game, yes, it's against the Bears team, but I think the Packers offensive line and the protection that they gave him and the composure that he played with in tight spots in third down, fourth down situations, I think it bodes well for the Packers moving forward. And if they can continue with that kind of protection, NFL QBs are going to pick you apart. And I don't think Jordan Love fits right in there with that.
Yeah, I don't think it would be. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be happy, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's gonna be some bumps in the road this year. I mean, we
Oh,
have a
yeah.
very easy schedule, but there's gonna be a lot of bumps in the road, and those and we kind of talked about that earlier. So if it happens, it happens. I'm not expecting a Super Bowl run out of Green Bay this year, but we're just looking to make progress and get a couple feathers in Jordan Love's cap here before we start making a big push.
Yeah. And speaking of the surprises, what was your guys' big surprise or overreaction from week one? We try not to overreact week one. We always make fun of the media for just over analyzing every little thing. Oh my gosh, the Chiefs lost, they're over, Mahomes is done. The Bills lost, Josh Allen's terrible, he's regressing. Are those realistic? Are they overstated? What's your surprise or your overreaction of the week, Bo?
I watched a little bit of the Pittsburgh 49ers game and I was shocked. I was shocked because I had caught bits and pieces of Pittsburgh in the preseason and I thought they looked really, really well oiled. I thought they looked well coached, and they were anything but any of that in week one. They got absolutely trounced by a 49ers team that I expected to be good, but I expected that 40 or that Pittsburgh team to be up to their level the way they had been trending, and it was a mismatch from the get-go. Pittsburgh had, I think, 1 yard in the first quarter. That's not a performance that looks good, and I think they're going to struggle offensively this year. It had looked much better, but I mean, you get up against a defense like that, and you can't move the football. You end up with a score that's one-sided, and I was shocked by how bad it was in Pittsburgh this week.
Yeah, I was if I had to a big surprise I was, and granted, and we've talked about this a little bit too, being in the bad weather, but I was surprised that the Patriots kind of hung in there with the meat grinder in Philly. It wasn't I didn't catch too much of that game, but the fact that they were able to hang in there and keep it close throughout the whole game. I mean, I guess I'm not entirely surprised because it's Bill Belichick, but surprised enough that they kept that game as close as they did for an angry Philadelphia team after coming up just short in the Super Bowl this last February.
If you had watched that game though, Philadelphia punched them in the mouth right out of the gate. They were up 16-0 early, and I just thought it was going to be a bloodbath. And when I turned it back on, I was like, how in the world are the Patriots still in this game? So yeah, that was a surprise to me. But going back and watching a lot of the games on replay, the teams that won had the team speed, and speed kills.
Yep.
Miami won that game over the Chargers because they were faster. Dallas absolutely dismantled the Giants because they had better team speed in every area of the game. Really, the only game that you could argue was maybe one more in the trenches than it was on the speed would be Detroit against Kansas City. But my overreaction, I hate to join the media, and the Aaron Rodgers injury is still fresh in our minds. But the Jets, without Aaron Rodgers, if they stay with Zach Wilson, they are absolute toast. Brees Hall looked fantastic. Dalvin Cook looked really good. Garrett Wilson looked really good with no help. The defense looked very good. They are screwed. You cannot win in the NFL without a quarterback. We saw how good they were last year at those skill positions and how good they were on defense, and they still could not string wins together. That team is in major, major trouble. And then my other overreaction would be, is that Dallas team legit? I want to still say no because we hate the Cowboys, and I really don't think the Giants are as good as a lot of people thought they were. But wow, did they look good. But I want to see Dallas have a game where they struggle and see how Dak and Mike McCarthy respond before I have an idea of what their season's going to finish with.
And it's a perfect matchup because they play this week. We got Dallas and the Jets matched up. And I think it's too early to tell with Dallas because we really didn't see a whole lot. We didn't need to from that offense. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a Dak believer. I think he's Kirk Cousins in a cool outfit, in a cool uniform, which is not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Maybe that defense can do it. Maybe Dak leads them to a win and just needs a couple of plays here and there. But we're going to see it this week against a really, really good Jets defense. And I think it's a wild spread. It's like 9.5, I think, at this point. But I think that Dak struggles against that defense. And I think this is a game that the Jets could cover. But if it ends up being the same thing and Zach Wilson has no time, we could see 43-3 again, and I wouldn't be surprised either. So Dan, how many games do you think Zach Wilson starts for this Jets team this year?
They keep saying they're going to stick with him, and honestly, I don't hate that decision because they went all in with the draft picks and all these decisions that they made in the offseason. They went all in for Aaron Rodgers. He's gone. Those draft picks and all those pieces that they moved, they're gone. You can't get those back. You can't continue to sacrifice to go pick up another quarterback, right? I do think they're going to bring in a veteran. They have to. I just and you can't throw in the towel because the team does have so much talent, because they have good players on the edges, because they have two very good running backs, because that defense is legitimate, top 3, top 5 in the league, no problem. I just don't think you can trade more assets to go get another quarterback. I think really their only option is to go the veteran route. I think if they could get Jacoby Brissett cheap, that would be my target personally.
Same.
I thought he fit in with Cleveland really well. They want to throw the ball, throw a couple first downs, which he can do with Garrett Wilson, a couple decent tight ends, rely on the defense. I actually think Jacoby Brissett would be a great fit. They were throwing out names like Matt Ryan and Case Keenum. No, I'm sticking with Zach Wilson over that. The problem is all these guys are talking about Zach Wilson. He matured. He made growth. He's becoming more of an adult behind Rodgers. It doesn't make him a better player. Zach Wilson is still not a good player. The touchdown that Garrett Wilson had was a terrible ball. He didn't throw good passes. He wasn't making good decisions. The defense and the special teams kept him in. So I agree with you. I think that game with Dallas could actually be a very low scoring game. I think it could be a slugfest. But I just think Dallas's defense is going to be too much. I don't see the Jets doing much of anything. They're going to have to be too one-dimensional. And although I do think the running game is going to be okay, it's not going to be enough to last 60 minutes with Dallas. And I'm not touching that game on the spread, but I think the Jets are in for some trouble this week.
Yep, I agree. 100%. Yeah, hey, I mean, I was surprised on how well Breece Hall did there, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here. But the Cowboys was my overreaction. I still need a lot more, like you said, Dan, and I need to see a lot more there. I think they just beat up a really bad Giants team the other night in some bad weather. Daniel Jones should not be making $40 million a year. It's just like it's rough. But I think hey, kudos to them. They did a hell of a job shutting that team down, but I need to see a lot more of them before I start thinking that they're gonna make a deep playoff push this year.
But I don't actually think that Giants team is all. I mean, they got housed. Yeah, I'm not saying that they weren't bad on Monday night, because they were, but I think they're better than that. I mean, you got to think they won a playoff game last year. Granted, it was against that garbage Minnesota Vikings team, but I think that team is better than 40-0 on Monday Night Football or Sunday night, whatever it was, Sunday night. Yeah. I think they're better than that. And I think they don't push for that division, but I think they finish with 8-9 wins. But that was a game that just snowballed. It got away from them and it snowballed, and there was nothing they could do to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not a team built to come back from behind. So it a couple turnovers and a couple defensive touchdowns. It got out of hand pretty quick.
Yeah. And then I got one more question for you, Bo, before we get to some Nick's notes and wrap up this week 2 pod. We talked about some bold predictions. Do you have any bold predictions for our viewers out there in real or fantasy land football?
Bold prediction, pocket passers in fantasy football are dead or nearing extinction. We talked a little bit in the beginning at the very top, but I think if you want to really compete in fantasy football and kind of in real football too, you need to have that extra dimension from the quarterback position. And yes, guys can win from the pocket. It's a thing. Like you look at Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert lives in the pocket. Yes, he can move a little bit, but it's just enough to keep you honest and to pick up first downs when you really need them, when guys get blanketed in coverage. You need guys at the quarterback position that have the ball every play to be able to move at just enough or enough to give you that extra bit of offensive firepower. And I think that if you don't have it, you get stuck. You get stuck. That's why, you look back at Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, those guys were an exception to a rule. And I think the way that the offensive game is headed in the NFL, fantasy and in real life, you need athleticism and you need guys that can move at the quarterback position.
That's the scheme though when you have a running quarterback. We just talked about QB1 this last week. Tua didn't run at all.
True.
But if you don't have a rushing quarterback, you better be able to scheme to get that space open because you don't have that read option. You don't have that wide zone.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you, especially from a fantasy perspective. It also gives you that higher floor, right? You can rely on Anthony Richardson for probably 30, 40 yards a game a week. You could probably rely on Justin Fields for 40 to 50 yards a week. That's another touchdown in most formats, right?
Yeah. And that rushing. So like you look at the Eagles with Jalen Hurts, he's their goal line back. I mean, they don't give carries to running backs on the goal line because they can use him as a blocker and just punch it in with the quarterback. So it just gives you a little bit of an edge.
All right, Nick, what do you got for wrapping up this week? What are some Nick's notes?
Well, there was only one player that I've been speaking this for the last year or so. There's only one player that I know of that has proven me wrong about the ACLs. Well, now there's two. Breece Hall, holy shit, did he impress? He was on a pitch count and play every single snap. And it didn't help that you have a good Delvin Cook over there. You had a good player in Delvin Cook, which I think those two are going to complement each other very, very well. Delvin Cook doesn't need to be the guy, but Breece Hall, after what are we, about 45 weeks or so, he tore his ACL and meniscus in week 7 last year, came out looking like a superstar once again. Then he's finishing up. Zay Flowers, wow. But I don't need to get into that. I mean, we all think it was wow, but what really caught my eye was 10 targets for Zay Flowers. You know how many targets OBJ had? 3, only 3. The $15-16 million man, coming off of granted, he hasn't been in football for a year and a half, but they brought him in and he wanted to play with Lamar. And he was the only quarterback he wanted to play with. Only 3 targets. I thought that was a little interesting. It's only a matter of time, I think, before he starts getting a little irritated and frustrated and then blow up. And we're gonna see the classic OBJ on the sideline. Calvin Ridley, he's still the real deal. That hasn't changed, even taking a year and a half off. Mike Evans. I know I'm doing a lot of wide receivers here, but this is my last one here. Mike Evans, not interested, man. Doesn't want to be there. Did you see after he caught that touchdown in Minnesota? Didn't celebrate with anybody, sprinted over the sidelines and sat down and just waited for his time to get back out on the field. He does not want to be there. They don't want to sign him, and they don't want to extend him to be a Buccaneer for life. So he is going out doing his business, and he is just not having much fun right now. And it was kind of interesting to see there. So
called it last week. It has not been mentioned, but I'm telling you, Mike Evans to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it could be.
I think it's a possibility.
But right now, man, he is not having fun.
It makes so much sense.
Yes,
it makes so much sense for him to go to Buffalo.
Yep. I think they'd have to give up a fair amount, though, to get him. I think you got to give probably a day 2 pick to get Mike Evans.
But if you're Buffalo and you're in win now mode, do you do that? I think you do.
Yep.
Hey, that's another thing. If we're talking Buffalo, I was very impressed, and I have out of my 2 dynasty leagues, I have 100% share of Dalton Kincaid. He was out there a lot with Dawson Knox on Monday night. Those two, they ran a 2 tight end set the majority of the time on offense, and that was really, really comforting to see for me that they're trying to get him out there. But I was impressed. I was surprised that he was out on the field as much as he was. I bet you he was. I mean, he's probably pretty close to in comparison to Dawson Knox on snap count. So
and I like that Buffalo was trying to establish the run early outside of Josh Allen. I liked that they did that. The Jets defense obviously was really good, and Buffalo got away from that, just started throwing way too much, which I hate to say because I have Stephon Diggs, so I want them to throw all the time. But if Buffalo is going to be successful, They've got to be able to establish that run game. With that 2 tight end set is gonna allow you to do that.
Buffalo is better than that. They're a better team than that. They're a better offense than that. And I think that they're going to have some tough conversations this week with Josh Allen to kind of try to rein him in a little bit. I mean, he lost them that game. He did. He turned it over way too many times. He kept that Jets team in the game. The Bills team is better than that. And it shows. Vegas expects them to win, and they expect them to win heavily against this Raiders team this week. I think they're favored by like 8.5 or something. So don't sell your Bills stock quite yet.
And they will. We do not condone gambling.
Nope.
But take the Bills.
We are not experts. We do not give any betting advice.
Although I went 10-2 in college, 8-2 in the pros last week, just 18-4, no big deal. Take the Bills this week.
Yeah. Well, I know we say this a lot. We could sit here and do this all night. We have a lot of teams that we didn't even scratch the surface on tonight, but we had a lot of fun. We've learned that Bo and Dan are not very good at the alma mater game. And maybe next time it'll hey, maybe it was a bust. It was worth a try though. So
it was fun.
Yeah, but hey, thank you guys for coming on. It's been a blast as always, and we will see everybody next week. And well, go Packers. Thanks, guys.
Go Pack.